The Flame Emperor and second in command of the Revolutionary Army, Sabo, versus the Surgeon of Death and Captain of the Heart Pirates, Trafalgar D. Waterlaw. Both Law and Sabo get a lot of love from their dedicated fan bases, and I feel like they get lumped in together in multiple tier lists. In some instances, I even see Sabo actually in the same realm as the actual top tiers in the verse, and just to keep it real with you, I really don't understand why. In a one-on-one match, I think it's pretty clear that Law takes the W, but of course, agenda piece is agenda piece, so let me at least show my receipts and cover the most important aspects of this matchup, in my opinion, to set the record straight. At the time of recording, the most recent One Piece chapter is 1128, so if some things change after this video is released, don't bug me about it. And with that being said, let's get started. Before we get into the stats, there's a few misconceptions that need to be cleared up right out of the gate, because I've seen a lot of misinformation spread when it comes to Sabo that frankly isn't true in the slightest. First up on our list is that Sabo, currently speaking, is not comparable to the Yonkos. I understand that for some this is common knowledge, but unironically there are people who actually take the Flame Emperor title seriously and forget that Big News Morgans twist the truth for the sake of a good story. Sabo being called the Flame Emperor after the raid in Mary Joa is just like how Luffy was called the Fifth Emperor by Morgans and spread across the entire world after the events of Whole Cake Island. And we all know what happened to Luffy later in the first act of Wano. Sabo himself also does not acknowledge this title. Number 2 is that Sabo did not fight a 1v2 against Fujitora in Green Bull. Again, there are people who actually think this is the case because of the false article written by Morgans, even though we know that the other revolutionaries were fighting the admirals. Some may twist this as a way to scale Sabo above Fujitora and Green Bull, but it was stated multiple times that the admirals could not use their full strength, and Fujitora was literally assisting in the escape of the slaves that the revolutionaries had freed. I don't know why people say this, but it does happen. Number 3 is that Sabo did not 1v6 Imu and the Gurusei. This is probably the biggest one because some people really inflate the actual events of the story. In chapter 1083, literally titled The Truth of That Day, Sabo recounts what actually happened during the raid on Mary Joa directly to Dragon and Ivankov. This is literally written from Sabo's point of view. In chapter 1085, we clearly see that he eavesdrops on the conversation between Cobra, the Gurusei, and Imu. He launches a fire fist at the Gurusei, which did nothing because of their regeneration, and another attack at Imu, which gets eaten up. He grabs Cobra and immediately begins to run away. Then he gets impaled by Imu and suffers a critical hit. Cobra then proceeds to act as Sabo's human shield to help him escape. That's it. Again, this is all retelling by Sabo himself. I'm not going to waste my time arguing with anyone who disagrees on these points. These are quite literally the facts presented by the story. And right out of the gate for stats, we're starting off with Haki. And just to be frank, Law isn't a fighter who actively has armament Haki incorporated into his fighting style like other fighters. He mainly uses it when needed. Although he doesn't have access to advanced armament or observation Haki, I wouldn't call his Haki average by any means, considering that post Wano he has showed the ability to negate the effects of devil fruit powers with his Haki after witnessing Big Mom and Kaido passively resist shambles and amputation being used against them. Sabo, on the other hand, is a lot more proficient with Haki, considering the fact that he pretty much could only use Haki up until he got the flame fruit. He has no signs of future sight, but based on the functionality of his dragon breath technique, you could argue that Sabo is using Ryo here, which is a good plus for him as a fighter. For some people, they might take this and say that because Sabo has shown more proficiency with armament Haki, he's able to negate Law's powers, which is not the case. Personally, I think the gap is genuinely not that big, but even if you disagree and say Sabo has a solid lead when it comes to Haki, there's two things that need to be considered. The first thing is that Law was still capable of using his Devil Fruit abilities against Kaido and Big Mom. The only moves that Law wasn't able to use against them were Amputate and Shambles. Although not shown, I think it's safe bet to also include Law's Soul Switch ability as well as Mess as ineffective. Regardless though, Haki being able to shut down all Devil Fruit abilities is untrue. As far as we know right now, it's only a few abilities, and if your Haki passively isn't overwhelmingly higher than your opponent, like in the case of Big Mom and Kaido, you'll need to actively burn through your Haki just to overcome a select amount of Devil Fruit abilities. The second, which mainly applies to Sabo, is that even if you scale his Haki higher, he's still susceptible to shambles and amputation. Dofi cleared Law in practically every aspect as a fighter, Haki included, and was still susceptible to shambles and amputation. Sabo, even if higher than Law's Haki, has no Haki feats that put him even remotely close to Big Mom or Kaido, or any of the other Yonko in fact. At best for this matchup, he'd be in the range where he's still ahead of Law, but unable to negate shambles and amputation like Dofi did. Regardless, this won't really matter because of the next category. Law blatantly has better endurance than Sabo, not even glazing. The fact that he took a Thunder Bagua from Hybrid Kaido and multiple Haki strikes from Soul Poke's Big Mom shows me he can take way harder hits than anything Sabo currently has in his arsenal. Sabo, on the other hand, was struggling against a suppressed Fujitora. Sabo didn't really take any serious damage because Fujitora didn't even really want to fight him in the first place. Sabo is actively questioning what Fujitora is plotting during their battle and counts himself lucky when Fujitora lets him go. I'm sure Sabo has gotten stronger since Dressrosa like most characters, but he doesn't have much showings of any really good endurance. You can argue that most characters within the ballpark of Sabo and Law are suffering the same fate as Sabo when he got hit by Emu, which is entirely fair, but Law also suffered a critical hit when he got his arm cut off by Dofi and was shot by him again, and still fought, landing the Gamma Knife on Dofi. After essentially one stab, Sabo is in critical condition and has no choice but to rely on Cobra, sacrificing himself to escape. Outside of this, Sabo does not have any more endurance moments in the story, good or bad. Law again takes speed, just essentially due to power creep. Sabo's best speed feat in battle still ties him to suppress Fujitora, who again wasn't actually trying to beat or kill him. Meanwhile, Law is facing off and reacting to Hybrid Kaido actively trying to kill Law and the other Supernova. Kaido is suppressed with basically everyone except Luffy, to be fair, but he was actually trying to take them out. Plus, I don't think it's a hot take to say Kaido is above Fujitora overall as a fighter. No matter what, I think it's fair to say that Hybrid Kaido is, with all his physical buffs, a faster opponent to react against than Fujitora not actually wanting to kill you. Pretty much the deciding factor here, Law's fruit is just way too busted. Due to Shambles still being on the table, Law is able to manipulate exactly where he wants Sabo and himself to be on the battlefield. Not to mention, because of Smoker, Law has experience dealing with conventional Logias with more clear win cons like stealing Sabo's heart or landing Gamma Knife. Sabo off rip of eating his Devil Fruit honestly has shown solid proficiency, but I don't think it's anywhere near the level control of Ace. It's only been a few months since Dressrosa in the story's timeline. Ace only had his powers for about 3 years, and in the Ace novel, it was shown that Ace grew much stronger with his powers by the time he fought Whitebeard for the 100th time before joining his crew. Whether you agree or disagree with the canonicity of the Ace novel, it's just a fact that it would be too short of a window from Sabo eating his Devil Fruit to the current events to say that he has fully mastered his powers. Even within the canon story, Ace's use of flame commandments surpass anything Sabo has displayed. This also puts Sabo at a disadvantage due to facing off against an awakened Devil Fruit user like Law, with essentially the ability to destroy you from the inside out while negating your durability, as confirmed in SPS 106. Law's fruit just gives him too many options to work with in battle that Sabo can't readily overcome. In contrast, being set on fire is not outside of Law's pay grade, seeing that he was engulfed in flames by Big Mom's stolen flame attack. And I think it's a stretch to say that Sabo's fire outclasses Big Mom's, a literal Yonko who's been active since the golden age of piracy and has had her powers for decades, in just a few months of obtaining his fruit. It just seems too unlikely given typical Devil Fruit growth rates in the story. With his large pool of options in this battle, Law has a significant edge over Sabo, and overall, Law's current stats completely overshadow Sabo's. I'm not saying it's impossible for Sabo to injure Law at this point in time if he lands an attack, but Law has consistent feats against higher level opponents and has taken more punishment from them. As of now, I say Law beats Sabo mid-diff. That's about it. Share your thoughts down below, because this is my first time making a One Piece scaling video, and I'd love to hear your opinions. Also, any suggestions for any matchups as well. I hope you all have a good day and stay safe, please. Peace.